and welcome to Quarter Time Podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P.
And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Quarter Time. Thank you so much for tuning in.
The Vitality Netball Superleague is now well underway, and there are all sorts of exciting contests and talking points coming out of the 6 games that we had in round 3. So Lucy G, what have we got coming up on the show today?
Well, we've got a pretty packed episode for you all today, so brace yourselves. There's so much to talk about this week. So again, we're going to bring you our 3-word summaries of each of the games, as well as revealing our game of the round and our player of the round. We also have a super exciting interview coming up with Mr. Netball and head coach of Leeds Rhinos himself, Dan Ryan. And we'll be chatting about all things coaching, including styles, choosing a squad and building a strong team culture. I promise you do not want to miss this one.
Okay, let's dive on into our recap of all the matches in round 3. First up, we had Storm versus Rhinos. Rhinos got depth. Absolutely brilliant performance from Rhinos again this week. And credit to Storm for bringing it back within 6. But Rhinos put on such a display, especially defensively, with Oyasola picking up 6 interceptions.
Next up was Dragons versus Sirens. And I've gone for Dragons. Send help. I mean, that might be a little bit harsh. They did have a better performance overall, but Sirens did dominate them really, and they had a really strong performance across all thirds of the court. And Sirens kept Dragons to 6 goals in that final quarter. Gia Abernathy and Cullen had a really strong performance in particular.
Our third game of the round was Thunder versus Pulse. And for this one, I said they were thunderstruck. That's potentially 4 words, but I'm using a hyphen. It was a really statement performance and absolutely just smothering by the Thunder defence, with Pulse looking really rattled and numerous balls just flying off the back line. Not a great scoreline from them, but Thunder, they are truly a championship team.
Following that game was Lightning v Mavs, and I've gone for anyone seen Mavs? I kind of felt like Mavs didn't really show up for this game. And I don't know if it was because they were missing Joe Tripp in goal defence, but if that is the reason, they really need to find a way of functioning properly without her or without any other member of the team for that matter.
Next up, we had Dragons versus Storm. And I said, way too easy. Unfortunately, there wasn't much of a through-court defence from Dragons in this game, and credit to Storm, they rectified their mistakes from the previous round and put in a solid performance to get the win.
Last game of the round was Wasp versus Bath, and I've gone for who'll stop Bath? Is there anyone that can stop Bath? They were just such an impressive team. They just continue to dominate the competition in round 3, and this makes me so excited for when they come up against Manchester Thunder in round 5 and 6, our next doubleheader. Next up, we have our game of the round. Lucy P, which matchup have you picked for this week?
Okay, so unsurprisingly, I've gone for the Bath Wasps game. And Bath just came out absolutely firing in this one. And I was so impressed by their defensive pressure from all players on the court. Every player on that court was defending for Bath, and it was incredible. I thought that Sophie Drakeford-Lewis really won the battle against Fran Williams, and it was so good to see her. I've absolutely loved watching her blossom over the last little while, and her relationship with Kim Borger was amazing, with Kim just pulling in balls out of the air with one hand. It was incredible to watch. Bath racked up 17 deflections in this game, and Layla Guskus was 7 of these, and she only came on in the second half. Absolutely incredible performance, and that just proves how strong their defensive pressure was. They were getting hand to ball every which way. I thought that the move to replace Iona Christian with Amy Flanagan in centre was a really good move by Mel Mansfield. I thought that Christian was getting pushed around a bit by Guthrie and wasn't really matching up very well against her. We had another umpire issue, I've just remembered in this game, with this time was advantage being played, where the infringement caused a turnover. That was a bit dodgy, but credit to Bath, they pulled it out the bag and they just had so much patience, structure, and actually just looked like they were really enjoying themselves. And I think you could describe it as a clinical performance apart from a little bit in the last quarter. I do also want to give a shout out to Wasps, who pulled it back within 5 in the last quarter. And I was blown away by their just grit and determination to keep going. I think Wasps will build, and Bath defence was causing them a lot of problems, but they did find a way to work through it. Rachel Dunn was rattled, I thought, a little bit by the physicality of Ebony, but kind of halfway through, she just remembered, oh yeah, I can actually just shoot from anywhere. Like, I'm actually Rachel Dunn and I can just fire them in from wherever I like. So once she started to do that, I've really found that Wasps found their flow. But it was a really good game to watch and definitely my favourite one of this round.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually feel that Ebony almost forced that change with Rachel, and she forced her to take the longer shots because she just could not get into her comfortable position under the post. But Rach Dunn is Rach Dunn. She is the long bomb queen, so it's absolutely no problem for her. But no, Bath defence did a terrific job.
So Lucy G, who have you picked for your game of the round?
Okay, so this is a bit of a controversial one, and it's certainly not my game of the round because it was the best game, but it is my game of the round because I think it has the best talking point. So I've gone for Thunder versus Pulse. So I not only want to talk about it because there's a comparison between Pulse's form in 2020, how they started the 3 games that they had compared to where they are now, but also because of how much of a blowout this game was, which we're actually going to touch upon a little later on one of our talking points. So Thunder came out the blocks like a bull in a china shop with 8 unanswered goals. And it was just completely unforgivable start from Pulse. They've really, really struggled. And I don't really know what's happened this season. Obviously, they started 2020 so strong, winning 3 on the bounce, although it is worth pointing out they weren't necessarily tested by some of the toughest teams in the competition, but they did still have 3 solid wins under their belts. But this season, they're just all out of sorts, particularly in attack. And I think Siggy Berger's really struggling. If you look at individual performances, I think her and Dean Thomas actually are having a bit of a tricky start to the season. Part of the reason that I think Thunder are so effective in what they do is because they challenge everything. They run their feet all the way to the ball on every single challenge throughout the court, and it really exposes teams that are a bit stationary or a bit static and waiting for the ball to come to them. And there was little mid-court defence whatsoever from Pulse. I watched it again on the replay, and Thunder are completely unchallenged, taking the ball through court to goal. That they weren't doing a zone defence, they weren't doing man on man. It was just sort of in no man's land, really. And they just weren't able to find their cohesion and their flow. And I actually felt a bit sorry for Halimat in the back as goalkeeper, just trying to pull everything out the bag to try and salvage something. I felt there was a lot of pressure on her. Pulse also had the lowest half-time score so far at just 13 for a half a game of netball.
Yikes.
So they've got a really big job on their hands if they want to push for a top 4 position this season, and they'll need to pull something out the bag to win against Sirens in round 4, who are they're growing, like they're getting better and better each week, and they've improved massively. So for me, it was the comparison between Pulse in 2020 and 2021, and also what a blowout this score was. It was almost 30 goal difference.
Yeah, that was really disappointing actually from Pulse for them to let it get away from them so much like that. But I do think that Thunder just put on such a good performance and were really clinical, and you can't underestimate the defensive pressure that they put on to really unsettle that Pulse attack.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've seen this quite a lot. There have been a few blowout scores in rounds 1, 2 and 3. So what do you make of that, Luce?
So I've been thinking about the scorelines a little bit this week, and I decided to look at the average goal difference for each game across the opening 3 rounds of the 2021 Vitality Netball Superleague season so far. And the average goal difference is 13.5 goals. To compare this, I looked at similar stats for the ANZ and the SSN. So I chose the opening 3 rounds of 2020 ANZ and looked at the average goal difference across the rounds. And then I also did the same for the 2019 season of SSN, pre-Supershot.
Boo.
Boo. The average goal difference was 8.3 for ANZ and 12.1 for SSN. So 13.5 for the Super League is not a million miles away from where the other leagues were at that point. What's interesting is that I then tried something slightly different. I took 1 round at random for the beginning, middle, and end of the ANZ and SSN seasons and worked out the average goal difference from these randomly selected rounds. For ANZ, it was 4.8, and for SSN, it was 7.6. So you would obviously need to look at this across a whole season or maybe even multiple seasons to see what trends occur and to get anything a bit more accurate. If anyone does have a bit of time in an Excel spreadsheet, please let us know what you find. But generally, it seems that as teams get to know each other throughout the season, the scorelines get closer. So we'll have to see if that's what happens with us in the Super League this year.
Well, this is my question with the Super League, and I find it fascinating, and it does make me wonder whether, as you say, this is just a case of teams getting to know each other better, figuring each other out, where their weaknesses are, etc. Or actually, does it mean that there's greater variation in the standards of teams across the Super League? And if so, what could we look to do to make the league more competitive so there are more teams realistically fighting for that top 4 position? Is it less teams in the league? Is it more funding? Is it a different format? It's who knows.
Absolutely. And I think really to get to the bottom of this, you would just have to look at more data. And everyone loves the 1 goal thriller. We love to see those games, but it's not always the case that that's what happens. But I would love to see a comparison of seasons gone by and see how this current 2021 season compares with both the ANZ, SSN, and also years prior in the Super League.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually think it's really important for us to note as well that the 2021 pre-season has been so disruptive, obviously, with COVID and everything, and it's not been an easy ride for any of the teams. And I do think we have to bear that in mind and take some of these blowout scores with a pinch of salt. It'd be great to know what you guys think, actually, and how we could potentially make the league more competitive. So hit us up on Twitter with your thoughts.
Next up, we have our players of the round. So who have you picked, Lucy G?
I have gone for the lovely Sophie Drakeford-Lewis.
Yay.
As you mentioned her already in your game of the round, she was so strong throughout the entire game. And I think it's worth pointing out, she shot at 100%, 14 from 14. So it's not even an insignificant number of shots. She's putting them up and she is sinking them. What I love about her particularly is her work rate. She is such a workhorse. She never drops her head. She never gives up. And I particularly love her defensive work as well as an attacker. I love a defensive attacker. She reminds me of Helen Housby in that respect. She's always on the defense as well. I think her relationship with Kim Borger is really important to note as well. They're just so established and so solid, and they almost have this like symbiotic relationship, and it's so fluid. It's a real joy to watch, and she just always seems to have so much space. Wherever she goes on court, there's just acres and acres of space for her. I just think she's a real star. I cannot wait to see her get more court time internationally as well. And it'll be really interesting to see whether she makes the Com Games squad in 2022. Because we've got some incredible shooters in the Roses lineup. So it'd be great to see whether she gets in there or not. So who have you gone for, Lucy P?
Okay, so I've gone for Alice Harvey, who was actually one of your tips as players to watch for the season, and you were spot on. She was amazing in the game this week. She just had such a strong start against Mavs and was just getting all up in their business. I think that in general, Lightning have a really structured defensive unit, and they were making it so difficult for Mavs. I actually felt in this game that Alice deserved the player of the match. No disrespect to Nat Panagrari, who I also thought did a fantastic job, but I think she just did so much to disrupt the play. And against Corbin at the beginning, Corbyn went to the bench, and I'm pretty sure that was a lot to do with the influence that Alice Harvey was having. She got 5 intercepts and only 8 penalties, according to the stats on the VNSL website. So if that is accurate, 8 penalties in 48 minutes for a goalkeeper is really disciplined. And I think it's something she's really worked on, because I think she was penalised quite heavy, if I remember correctly, in the opening round. So if she's improving on her game at this rate, it's scary to see what she's going to be like, when you think about a couple of years' time, or, later on, potentially even England, that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely love watching her this week and thought she did a fantastic job.
So coming up, we have arguably the most loved man in netball, Dan Ryan, on the show with us, where we pick his brains about coaching, culture, and what it means to be a team.
Our chat with Dan was so incredible that we couldn't actually fit it all into this episode. But don't worry, we're not going to deny you any of his awesome content. We're going to release a little cheeky bonus episode in a few days' time for those of you who want a little bit more Dan Ryan in your life. Who doesn't? We are absolutely delighted to be joined by head coach of Leeds Rhinos and the Northern Ireland international team, Dan Ryan. Welcome, Dan.
Hello, Lucy 1, Lucy 2. How are we?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you with us.
So we're going to dive right in. So as someone who has coached a number of teams at elite level, both domestically in Australia and in the UK, as well as internationally, we thought you'd be a pretty great person to chat to about coaching and team culture. So to kick us off, let's take a look back to round 1 of the Vitality Netball Superleague. You clearly faced a really difficult situation in the opening weekend against Mavericks, with 3 of your starting players going down in the first half, every coach's nightmare. And we were wondering how you as a coach build resilience in your team, particularly the youngsters. Is crisis management something that you practice or particularly focus on at all?
Yeah, I think the response to any situation, be it good, bad, or otherwise, from a coach is really important, because your playing group often sees you as obviously the leader of the group, but the way that you handle the occasion yourself is quite often reflected in how the group handles it as well. And one of the things that we've been massive on at Leeds Rhinos from the very beginning, so our history is 20 weeks old. From the very, very start, I always said to the group that this is your team and you all have a contribution to make. It's not about me as the head coach. It's not about Jade and Fee as the co-captain. It's not about the most experienced or most exciting player. Everyone here has a role to play in this group, and the role might be different to what you want it to be. It might be more than you expected. It might be less. But either way, your role is as important as the next person. Therefore, everyone is constantly making a contribution to what we're trying to achieve together. I think for me, like as a coach, I've had a really interesting career and a very different journey. It's been up, down, left, right, highs, lows, a lot of different things. But I think what I've probably learnt, particularly working with this group, is that it's the way you handle adversity is so critical. And if you make it something bigger than it's not, it can be quite problematic. And I've had a lot of people say to me over the past week, "Oh, you've handled it really well." But for me, I've just handled it how I thought I should handle it. I said, "Oh, that's okay. We've lost 3 players. Injuries happen. We're not going to throw our arms up in the air and complain and make excuses. We're going to maximize the opportunity for the players that are waiting in the wings. We're going to embrace the chances that they have and see what they can do." And I was really proud of the group, particularly in the win against Storm, that, we could have 3 new players in our starting lineup. We could bring on 2 new players at halftime, and they could all get out there and make a contribution. And, the win was the bonus. But for me, it was more around the performance and their belief in what they could do, and them fitting into the greater structure of what we're trying to create here, but understanding that every single one of them, no matter who they are, has a contribution to make at any given time. So that's been important, because, you lead and it's reflected in your players, and also too, the players reflect back at you. So when they're confident, I'm confident. When I'm confident, they're confident. When they're having a good time, I'm having a good time. It's all connected when you're all kind of in it together. So that's been pleasing to see so far.
Talking a little bit more about culture, there was an interview that you had with Sky Sports prior to the Super League starting, and you said, "One thing that we know we need to do as a club is build a winning culture, and that obviously takes time." Can you tell us a little bit about what this means? What kind of goes into building a team or club culture, and how much of that success comes down to culture?
Yeah, hugely. I think, you can have the best players in the world and the most talented list, but not win the championship. And for me, that always comes down to a lack of dynamics. I think any coach out there needs to spend as much time working on the mechanics, which is all the things that happen on the court, the technical, the tactical, the structure. But if you underestimate the importance of the dynamics and how people work and interconnect and interrelate and understand and listen and all of those types of things which actually matter more than anything, I'm a big believer that you can have a very average team and make them great, as opposed to having the best players and expecting to win all the time. So when I think about, building a winning culture, for me, it's the winning culture isn't reflected in the result. It's reflected in the behavior and the progress. And so for me with this group, as everyone asks me all the time, what are your expectations? Where are you going to finish? I'm like, we haven't even discussed that because it's irrelevant. For us, what we're trying to do is make sure that we are better today than we were yesterday. And we grab from every game and every training session the things that we can progress and move forward to. But while we do that, we're actually acknowledging the little wins that happen in our environment all the time, which actually then allows you to move towards winning matches, winning championships, getting the end result. So you can't just develop a winning culture by winning matches. You need to develop a winning culture by all of the day-to-day elements that allow success in all of its forms to take place. And actually educating the players on what that looks like has been really interesting because they're playing at the moment with a great level of freedom, and they're playing with a great level of confidence because we're not fixated on whether we win or lose, because the reality is we're all driven to win. Like, we all play at the top level to win and be the best. However, we also understand that if we win, it doesn't make us a better person. And if we lose, we're not less of a person. So yes, be driven by the competition and be driven by the improvement and the growth and that. And if we're driven by that stuff, the result will kind of take care of itself. We'll either win the match or lose the match. Either way, we go again, we go again, we go again. So, a winning culture takes time, and it's people, it's behaviors, it's benchmarks, it's standards, and it's making sure that you're reflecting and you're measuring yourself against those things all the time. And like I said, a winning culture isn't up to the coach or one player. It's up to everybody. And it's quite often reflected in how you go about your day-to-day business, be it the 1%ers, the high-performance behaviours. It's quite complex. And actually educating the players and the staff on what that looks like is really key, because it's a collective approach to create a winning culture. And just because you win matches doesn't mean you necessarily have a winning culture. It has to be sustainable through the day-to-day behaviours and the processes, which allows the bigger picture to come to life, I guess.
So you've spoken a bit about this already, but I find it so fascinating. And it seems to me from watching you with your team and other coaches with their team that the coach-player relationship is really multidimensional and quite holistic, in that it can be energizing, honest, a space for listening and advice, a space for support, for self-improvement in both directions, and that it can be all of these things and more at any one time. So when you're building your relationships with your players, how much emphasis is put on the more holistic elements like virtues, values, and character building over the more practical stuff like skills and drills and gameplay? How much goes into building the human being and not the player?
Yeah, all the time, to be honest. And I think, again, that's where as coaches we can be so fixated on having the best game plan and the best structure and the best strategy, and forgetting around the key element of how our people actually feel about themselves and each other. And that's the stuff that's really critical. And I think with my coaching, I've always probably been referred to by a lot of people as like a player's coach, and relationships is one of my biggest values as a coach. It was one of my biggest values as a player. I always wanted to be deeply connected to my coach, so I felt like we were in it together. And, I've certainly taken that into my coaching. And, I started off that way as an assistant coach at the Adelaide Thunderbirds, where one of my main roles really was to be kind of the relationship guru with the group. And it kind of evolved over time. And I think a lot of coaches, when they move into head coaching positions, feel like they have to step away from the relationship element because they have to be ruthless and they have to be cutthroat. And I certainly struggle with that at certain times in years gone by. However, what I've really understood about myself is that for me to coach at my best and to thrive, I really need to be fully invested in every single human being in my group, and they need to be fully invested in me as well. So we have this deep level of trust and respect for each other. And while we have professional roles to play, I need to know what they're like as a human being, and they need to know that I'm a human as well, because I will make mistakes and I don't have the answers to everything, and they will make mistakes and they're not perfect as well. So understanding that is critical, and sharing your life story is such an important element, because you are who you are for your experiences, and you end up being the person you are based on what you experience. So understanding that about your players and the people in your environment is really important, so you can have those deep connections and understanding. And the reality is, in a team environment, you don't all have to be friends. And I think that's probably one of the biggest myths ever, is the reality is, 10 players, like, they're not all going to get along, but if they have a deep level of trust and respect with each other based on a level of understanding, then you can actually get those mechanics and dynamics working really, really well. So it's a big part of my coaching. And, I've got to know these girls here at Rhinos in the space of 20 weeks really, really well, but they've also got to know me really well. And so I'm able to bring a lot of my character and personality to my coaching. And so our pre-game is almost like it's quite ridiculous, to be honest, but we have a really good time. And we have fun together, which is important. And the element of fun in high performance sport, a lot of people think, why do you have fun in high performance sport? But if you're not having fun, it makes the job really, really difficult. And I've had experiences in coaching where there hasn't been a lot of fun or joy in the environment, which has really sapped my energy as a coach and also impacted my players. Because at the end of the day, if you love what you do it well. And if you've got a deep, deep respect and investment in your people, you will give it everything you've got. You'll go above and beyond. And I think, that's kind of reflected in how these players play for each other. And that's what a good team is about. It's not about having the best players. It's not about who's the superstar. It's not about who gets all the accolades. It's, are you willing to sacrifice yourself and be really pleased to see someone else shine if it's not you? And are you prepared to be your authentic self in the environment and be embraced for that person? I think that's really critical. But there's nothing more important in sport than relationships, to be honest, because if the relationship is strong, you can have the hard conversation, because it's not hard. It's just an honest conversation. But yeah, that trust and respect piece in that relationship element, it's absolutely critical.
Yeah. And I think we've actually noticed that already in that match against Mavs, just how much your players were doing it for each other. They were working their little socks off to try and get the win for each other. And I've never seen that as clearly demonstrated in a game of netball as I did it during that game. And so we felt we had no choice but to remark on that. It's so clear what you're working towards and the culture environment that you're building. And you can really, really see that on court.
You need to write a book, by the way.
One day.
If there are any publishers listening, get involved, because all of this is just absolute gold. I think, so many coaches fall into these kind of traps, and it will be interesting for them to kind of look at things from a new and more holistic perspective.
So when it comes to performance, having the physical ability for the game is one thing, but having the confidence or the self-belief to execute that skill under pressure or when it's needed most is a whole nother story. As an example, Helen Housby with that buzzer goal for the gold medal in Com Games 2018. So how important is self-belief for players, and what techniques do you use as a coach to help them build confidence and self-belief?
Well, I think the biggest thing when we think about confidence is you don't just have confidence. Like, confidence is something that is developed just like muscle mass and strength and endurance and speed. You have to spend time working on it and building it. So that's always one of the biggest myths in sport. Oh, just be confident, just because, well, I'm not confident, so how can I just be confident? So quite often, I always think confidence comes from preparation, and whether that's a really good training week or a really good training month or training cycle or whatever it might be, a great moment that then brings confidence the next moment. But you have to invest time in building confidence, and players need to invest time in building confidence in themselves, because I'm a big believer too that you can't be dependent on somebody else to give you confidence. It has to come deep within. And that's also from a coaching perspective too. I've struggled with confidence, after my experience with the Adelaide Thunderbirds, which was quite tough, to be honest. And it really does make you doubt and challenge your deep level of confidence and self-belief. But you can't be dependent on other people to lift you up. You need to be able to find that within yourself to do that. And so I always encourage my athletes to pat themselves on the back when they do something good. Like, so many athletes are self-deprecating, and so many athletes gravitate towards the negative and the area to fix up. And so many coaches do that too. And I'm sure I'm guilty of doing that quite often. I analyze a game and the first thing I'll say is fix that, not good enough, need to be better there. And you actually forget about, oh, that was awesome, that was great, gee, she was smart there, oh, fantastic there. So when you're actually watching a game live, you're kind of constantly always on those things that can be improved. And then when you go back and watch the broadcast of a game, I quite often find I just love watching them play and go, oh, that was really good, oh, I didn't pick that, that was awesome. And you're just kind of always looking at then it through a different lens. And it's the same way you try and teach the athletes is it's not always about what can I do better at. It's, well, what did I do really well? And you need to fuel your own soul with that confidence. Oh, I can shoot the ball from distance. I can rip open the defense. I can hunt the ball. I put great pressure here. I didn't get the intercept, but my teammate did. All that type of stuff. I think you need to spend time on it, and you need to value that as much as anything else, because like I said, you don't just wake up and be confident. You need to work on it. And it's either through your preparation, or it's through your own self-talk or self-belief or self-awareness or self-worth, whatever it might be. But it is something that, just like training in the gym and just like training on the court, you need to spend time building it. So self-belief and confidence can come and go quickly like form. But again, you can recapture form very quickly if you work on it. So it's one of those things, spend time on it and you'll reap the rewards. And if you push it to the side, expect it to pop its head up when you need it the most. So yeah, it's one of those things that needs time and effort for sure.
I was listening to a podcast with Eddie Jones the other day, and he said that he's learnt more from general managers in hotels than anywhere else, how they're able to devote their full attention to something, yet still be able to be acutely aware of what's happening around them and be able to deal with any problems immediately. So outside of sports, what has been your biggest influence or your greatest learning moment that you try to bring into your coaching?
Well, the biggest moment for me happened in the summer of 2019. It sounds like one of those old, back in 2019. I walked the Camino de Santiago, so 800-kilometre pilgrimage through Spain on foot with a backpack. And it was at a time in my life that I was definitely struggling. So after the Adelaide Thunderbirds experience, where we lost 27 games in a row over 2 years, won the first game, lost 27 in a row after that, I took that experience so personally, because I had so much, I think, of my identity wrapped up in what I did. And so many other people around me always associated me as the coach, when I was so much more than the coach. However, I really, by the end of that Adelaide experience, which was the hardest coaching experience I reckon you could possibly go through, and I don't think anything would ever surprise me in coaching after those 2 years. But I was very lost afterwards, and very lost in the fact that definitely struggling with mental health issues that I'd never really faced before until I took the job at Adelaide. It all kind of started when I got the job initially, and it all kind of reared its head and was quite confronting. It was the loneliness and isolation at the end of it that really affected me, because I'd gone from being in what was meant to be my dream job, but it was a nightmare experience, to then being only 34. So I started the Adelaide Thunderbirds as a head coach when I was 31, so very young as a head coach. And there I was at 34. I'd had to move back to my parents' place, so I'm living in a single bed at my mum's place. And I'm cleaning up all of my stuff, and I'm kind of like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And I'd obviously then got offered the job at Northern Ireland and Manchester Thunder. So I'd moved back to the UK pretty quickly to keep coaching, because I knew that I wanted to keep coaching, that I was going to die before I let the Thunderbirds experience be the end of me. If anything, it's been the start of me, to be honest, which has been awesome. But I walked the Camino de Santiago because it was the right time, and I'd always wanted to do it, but never really had the time to do it, I guess. And it's one of those bizarre things that it sounds strange, but it calls you to it. Like, it's a little bit airy-fairy spiritual, but you get called to it. And all of a sudden you make the decision, the next day I'm on the plane and I'm doing it. So I made the decision like in 24 hours.
Wow.
And so started the walk. And basically, I wouldn't say it was a life-changing experience because I certainly had a good awareness as to who I was as a human being. But I'd lost so much of myself over that 2.5 years in Adelaide that I became unrecognizable to me and to my inner circle and my loved ones and all that type of stuff. And the Camino for me was walking away from the baggage and the hardship and the struggle and walking towards something, although I wasn't sure what I was walking towards. And what I was actually walking towards was this whole new version of myself, which was new knowledge, new wisdom, new emotional intelligence, new awareness, and also a deep, deep understanding that as a coach, like I'm a coach by trade, but as a person, I'm much more than what I do as a job. And me accepting that was really important, which again kind of got really clear in my head. Well, I don't care if I win or lose a netball game, because if I win it, I'm not a better person than what I was before the game started. And if I lose it, I'm not less of a person if I was beforehand as well. And that's why, like, I'm quite comfortable now working in high performance sport where you're constantly judged on outcomes and results. Why for me, I'm not driven by that. I'm driven by the journey to get to those destinations, which is something I'm really passionate about. And there were so many different things I learned along the way in the Camino about myself, about life, about other people, about everything, to be honest. And that experience, along with the Thunderbirds experience, for me, two polar opposite experiences, but both of them are the gift that keeps on giving. And I wouldn't be who I am as a coach in a professional setting and who I am as a human being, as a 36-year-old man right now without those two experiences. And yeah, it's taught me a lot of different things, but I think, I have a deep, deep respect for winning and losing equally, because it's the stuff in my chosen career that happens in my industry. These things happen. But I love the human element side, and I love the self-discovery and awareness that comes from life's experiences, and working with the players and sharing some of those things with them, and also trying to help them make meaning of their own life's experiences as to why they might be the way they are, or how they handle setbacks or struggles or whatever it might be. I'm really addicted to that type of stuff. I find it fascinating. So yeah, if you ever want to find out a lot about yourself on a deep level that can be confronting but also very empowering, go for a really bloody long walk with a backpack and you'll find some answers. But I think that was the life experience for me, which has certainly shifted me now to be who I am and where I am today. And couldn't be more grateful for the great experiences on that walk, but also the hardship endured at Adelaide, because the way that I've been able to navigate my way through that to now see, I guess, the fruits of the labor in the way that I'm coaching and leading, and actually just the way I see the whole industry. Like, I'm not terrified if I lose a game. It doesn't bother me. I'll, get ready for the next week. So yeah, that's been a fascinating experience.
There's a quote from Michael Jordan on the concept of failure, which Lucy and I simply love. I'll just read it out for you. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So we all know that at some point in our lives, we will fail. Failure is inevitable. And I personally believe that failure is one of the greatest learning tools that a person could have, like you've already touched on. So can you give us a bit more insight into your own relationship with failure as a coach, and whether you now try to embrace it, try to avoid it, and sort of how it impacts your ability to coach?
Yeah, like I touched on before, is that having a relationship with winning and losing equally is so important, because if you don't respect losing for what it can offer you, you miss the valuable tools that it's actually there to give you. And also the same thing when you win. If you just look at the win and you don't look at the growth areas, you miss the improvement that can happen from the win as well. So both can be quite complex in that regard. And I think for me, as from a very young age, have always been fascinated by people that overcome adversity. And so my bookshelf at home, and back in Australia more so, I've got quite a few here in the UK, but in Australia, is just filled with people that have been faced with some form of failure, struggle, setback, hardship, and they've found a way to work their way through it, making meaning of that circumstance or that situation or that event, and they've come through the other side actually using it for the greater good, and they've become far more of a well-rounded, aware, whatever it might be, human being, or the impact they've had on other people because of that navigation through that hardship. I've always been so passionate about that. And I think for me, I've always been, I guess, what you describe as a winner and a high achiever. My whole life, I always was striving towards something, and I was always fortunate enough that I'd quite often get what I was working towards. So when I had the Adelaide experience where it was loss after loss after loss, I was like almost in shock that this was the experience, because I had no idea how to handle it, because I'd never been in a situation like that. And I started doing some work really on with a sports psychologist who was also from like a Buddhist mentality, a real spiritual kind of guy that was all around those different ways of thinking and response and all that type of stuff. And the biggest piece of advice he gave me was acceptance. So this has happened, accept it. Don't deny that it hasn't happened. Be really true with what your emotions or your struggles are and accept them for what they are, and then start to move through them. So I think the biggest value we can get from life is actually facing our setbacks and our failures and our struggles head on, looking them in the eye, as uncomfortable as that can be, as confronting as that can be, and being willing to make meaning of them and find the reason why they're happening, to then work through them, because they will rear their head again in the future, and you will see the growth if you've actually dealt with and processed and moved past it and through it. So yeah, I'm a big one like yourself around any time I get a setback, embrace it as a huge opportunity. And if you can see it positively, you will reap the rewards, I guarantee it. But if you have the failure and try and push it to the side without dealing with it, you'll struggle, because if you haven't dealt with it or worked through it, it will come back again to bite you. So yeah, making meaning of hardship is the best way to get growth and progress, development, evolution as a human being. I think that stuff is so, so important. So embrace the hardships as much as you would embracing the winning moment.
So what one piece of advice would you give to a grassroots coach looking to take the next step up in their coaching journey?
Be hungry for knowledge, hungry for learning, hungry for opportunity. I think that's the biggest thing every coach should have. No matter what level you're coaching at, always be aspirational to want to do more, to want to grow, to know more, to evolve, and seek those opportunities, whether it's through listening to a podcast, reading a book, connecting with another coach, cross-code coaching, anything that captures growth, development, and improvement is the best piece of advice I would give. Because I guess for me, like I'm only 36. I've got a lot of experience as a coach, but my desire to learn, grow, evolve, develop is more hungry than anything else, to be honest. That's what I'm driven by, just the constant improvement. Just like an athlete wanting to get better, as a coach, you're wanting to get better. So be curious about the way the world works and how people work. Be curious about yourself and how you work, and just seek those opportunities to discover, to learn, to grow, because that's what coaching is. The moment you stop learning is the moment you stop coaching. So yeah, never stop learning and you'll never stop coaching.
Thank you so much, Dan. This has just been such a brilliant conversation, and it's amazing for us to download all of your knowledge, and I'm sure people listening will be writing furious notes, trying to record everything that you've said. There's just so much wisdom in there. So thank you so much. And before we let you go, we are going to put you on the spot. We want you to sum up the Super League so far in just 3 words.
Cool. 3 words. Professional, slick, and roller coaster.
Love it.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the 3rd episode of Quarter Time. We have absolutely loved bringing you this conversation, and we really want to hear what you thought. We also can't wait to bring you more awesome netball chats next week.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Quarter Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Let us know which players have stood out for you each week of the Super League using the story template in our Instagram highlights.
We would also love to hear your predictions for round 4 of the Vitality Netball Superleague. Tweet us or tag us on Instagram with your guesses.
Enjoy the next round of matches and see you next week.
Bye.